I guess I'm a little late to the party. Tearscape is heavily inspired by Bloodborne and Zelda. I mean, look at this, your character is literally referred to as a hunter, and the outfit is very reminiscent to the iconic hunter's outfit. I'm not hating this, in fact I like that there's another game out there which has drawn inspiration of the style, because when you really think about it, we don't have many games that have a similar style to Bloodborne. It's mainly Dark Souls or Elden Ring that devs try to emulate. It's also been a while since I played a Zelda-like game. Like seriously, the last Zelda game I actually played was on the GPA, and that was when the console was considered new. What? And I can't even remember the title. I could just Google it. A Link to the Past. Yeah, that brings back memories. So Tearscape was a little nostalgic for me, but it also reminded me of how limited in terms of actions you are with these sort of games, but it works with the Soulsborne genre when you think about it. Anyone who's already played a title like Bloodborne or any other Souls-like, you already know how your actions require commitment, and mistiming or overextending leads to yourself being punished. For the people who haven't played those games, all of your actions have recovery frames. This basically means when you attack, your character is vulnerable and unable to do anything else until they've recovered back to the state they were before performing that action. The timing isn't severe, literally a blink and you'll miss it sort of situation. However, the game isn't going to wait for you to recover, so you'll take a hit. Although being 100% honest, the game isn't difficult in any way, and being a Soulsborne-ish game doesn't make it harder, keyword here being ish. I'd say the roots of this are more in line with old school top-down Metroidvania games, because you know, look at it. So I treated it like that, and yeah, I wasn't surprised with how 90% of the enemies can be skipped or hit quickly so they're knocked back and easy to keep in a stun lock. There's a lot of backtracking, which is to be expected, but I made this worse for myself. You actually get a map you can use to find your way around. Well, you have to first find the map for the zone you're in, but once you have it, you can pin parts of it so you know where to go back in order to unlock an area you couldn't earlier. I like that you can do this, and there are different icons too, so when coming back to the game after taking a break, it's easier to realize what you were looking for. I of course didn't use this function, and that was a huge mistake. Navigating the zones isn't difficult, and with the map it helps, but if there's any advice I give to people, it'd have to be about pinning everything you can't access at the time, so you're not spending half an hour looking around an area to realize you've already been there and the chest has already been unlocked, and it's actually a different section that you're thinking of. Unless you don't care about collectibles, in which case the game does a pretty good job of guiding you from zone to zone. It's surprisingly linear, but that's not a bad thing. I didn't do all the bosses in the correct order and realized this when I found the key to the desert boss before finding the key to the griffin fight. Looking back at it now, I realized I was being stupid and just didn't explore everything around the castle area, so I guess the game does give you some choice on where to go, depending on if you have the ability which removes whatever is blocking it from access. Most of the time you won't, so you wouldn't be in the same position I was in, but there are about 3 bosses you can do in different orders. I really like exploring in games, and Tearscape doesn't disappoint with rewarding you either. You can find different weapons, tools, shields, tokens, and upgrade material. Which sounds incredibly basic now that I've listed it like this, but it's nice finding something new, especially when it's the upgrade materials. You have to find 3 of both Crimson Tears and Tear Glass Shards to improve the capacity and effectiveness of your healing potion. There aren't any upgrades for weapons, but the damage scales based on your character's strength, so it's not all bad there, just feeling a little lacking. It's a little odd that I can't switch tokens unless I'm at a statue though. You can swap weapons and shields freely, but the tokens are where they draw the line apparently. Some of the tokens aren't anything to write home about. You get rings which increase the stat by 2, but most of them have unique effects which are very specific, like having the grappling hook extended or getting a little health back after killing an enemy, or my personal favourite, the one which heals you twice but after 10 seconds of the initial heal. This helps a lot with some of the boss fights and exploring, because the later section of the game has traps which really test your timing. But I think the most interesting thing out of the items I just listed are shields. Why would shields be an item in a game like this? The truth? I have no idea, but I appreciate the inclusion and that they actually serve a purpose which can be used for enemies and the environment. For the environment, it's pushing a boulder out of the way to gain access to another area or to block and deflect projectiles, but for enemies, you can block, which will give you chip damage unless you can do a perfect block, at which point you don't take any damage and aren't knocked back either. This can work for bosses too, and you can deflect projectiles at enemies, but this is a little harder than pressing L1 at the right time. There is a story in Tearscape, and it's presented in a similar fashion to other Souls-likes. Dialogue is a little vague with what's going on, but with how few and far between conversations the NPCs are, as well as items which give you lore, this is pretty evident with not being the main focus of the game. In fact, as soon as I booted it up and they mentioned about a church, I instantly said to myself, oh, we have the healing church here, and then turned off my brain. You've seen this before. A religion or order is currently in power, they're doing some stuff which is questionable, and you end up discovering what's going on after confronting someone midway or very close to the end of the game. It's not the most compelling story, but it doesn't need to be, and the developer didn't intend for the game to be like that either. The real focus is on the gameplay itself. I know I said this is more Metroidvania than Souls-like, and I stand by that, but it's actually Metroidvania light. The backtracking isn't as severe as other titles, and it's not confusing with where you're going either, although I will say this, the puzzles in Tearscape are questionable. Some of them are easy to solve as clues are left out in the area for you just to figure out. Others are also out there for you to figure out from the clues but require more thought to them. I'm not the biggest fan of puzzles, so my experience with them will always be negative, and I can see what they were going for, but some puzzles I solved through dumb luck, which made some of the items I got feel a little undeserved. There are items the game gives you without needing to solve a puzzle, and these help with traversal but also with fighting bosses. Whether it's this bouncy ball which is called a cannonball, not sure when they got that function, or the grappling hook which is only used for one boss and that's it. Shame it wasn't used for more. But it's time to talk about the bosses and how unique they are. You have your ninja boss, Big Birds, Rock Guy, this amalgamation of something. These are all fun to fight, my favourite being Maya Leviathan. This boss makes use of the grappling hook and is really creative. It did take me a couple of attempts to realise how to fight it, but that's just my 2 brain cells not waking up at the time. I think if there's anything memorable about Tearscape, it'd have to be the boss fights. They're all very unique and creative with designs and mechanics. I love how the rock golem goes onto a pogo stick to crack the floor, and when you walk over it, it becomes a hole that you could fall into. Or the ninja boss and how he goes invisible for a couple seconds, forcing you to lock in and get ready to dodge, which took a bit of time for me to get the hang of, although I'm pretty sure his sword's hitbox is bigger than it appears. Even the last boss, which I'm actually going to rant about. Lacrimore is bullshit. And it's not because he's hard or hits like a truck, no, it's because the way he's designed does not complement his arena. First off, he's random in what attacks he does, and some of them even have random locations. When he slams his arm, it will pick your current location, but getting the left or right arm is entirely random. Then there's the fire shot from his eyes. There's no concrete method or timing to this, just have to hope for the best when you dodge he doesn't switch to the other eye and hit you when your iframes are gone. He's also got a bite attack. I guess for a floating head it makes sense, but this took some time for me to realise the timing. As soon as he shakes, that's when you have a second to dodge. It's not the hardest thing to do, but the problem is it completely obscures your character. Given the length of the arena, it shouldn't be too much of an issue, right? Well, the arena gets smaller in phase 2, so you could wall into the abyss, which sometimes is a tactic to avoid damage from his attacks if you can't dodge the safety. You get iframes when you spawn back onto the platform, and the health loss is way less than any of his attacks, so I did kind of cheese this fight when I realised this. Finally, you have the last of the attacks during his fight, fireballs, and they are delayed, so you'll be running around like a headless chicken trying to avoid each one. All of these things by themselves aren't difficult to deal with. Mixing it in with the gaps you have to roll past makes it a little more tense but manageable. Having every single attack he does be random, have no order, and obscure where you are, that's where this boss becomes bullshit. My kill on him wasn't skill, I literally saw I could spam him to death and did that. If I recorded my voice at the time, you'd have heard the buttons on my controller being mashed so hard you'd think I discovered the internet for the first time. I did play the game by myself. I'm sure if I was using the co-op feature it would be a lot more fun, but I never got to test it. So I'm not sure if the boss health scales, but what I do know is you can play the whole game through co-op, which reminded me of the co-op feature from the Lords of the Fallen, only more relaxing and less dark. It didn't take too long to finish Tearscape. I think I clocked in around 8 or 9 hours before beating the final boss, and I did go back to get all the collectibles to get my 100% achievement ribbon on Steam. It was a lot of fun. I love the design of the game, how creative it is with the tools and mechanics, solving puzzles, even if some of them was luck, finding hidden locations. Yes, there are hidden areas that I didn't show because I didn't want to be that guy. Granted, I hated the last boss and had some moments where I was a little annoyed, like the minecart section. This can easily be fixed if you use the shield correctly. Enemy variety is very limited, but for the price I can't complain too much. I've seen games twice or 3 times the cost that have even less enemy variety, less creativity, and just overall fun not being there. So Tearscape is a really good game and definitely worth getting. I have a huge Steam library which is never ending, but very few of them I take the time to 100%. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, I want to say thank you. It's shorter than the other videos I've made recently, but I have a bunch of things planned and hopefully can get them out as soon as possible. Until then, if you have any suggestions on what to improve on or games to look into, let me know and I'll see what I can do.